since some of these burnt down. So, but I'm going to let him talk about some of the impacts that they have seen in their shoreline. Rich?
Thanks, Brian. So we're on Pastime Lane over by the seminary. I'm going to go off the video here. We're right here. And from here to here is 1,069 feet approximately. It showed 1,070. So we're like the narrowest part on Long Lake. And what I've noticed, about 4 or 5 years ago, I talked to Brian. I was saying how it appears that our shoreline, we were losing more and more of it. And I was like, this looks pretty devastating that all of a sudden the shoreline, our rocks are out farther, and the actual grass that's grown through the rocks, that's getting sloughed off into the lake. So within the last year or so, then I noticed, holy cow, it's even worse. So every year we go in around August, pick all the rocks up, put them back. Well, last August we didn't get a chance. Now they've talked about wind and ice damage, and if you look where we're at, we got a prevailing west wind usually. We get some northeast winds, but I made it a point this year to watch the ice. And what usually happens is the ice will melt along the shoreline prior to going out because the radiant heat from the actual shoreline from the sun will melt the ice. Well, this year the ice actually went straight north, or from southwest to northeast towards this marsh. And it normally goes that way, it goes up towards the Sem. You could see a little ice pack against the Sem shore. I can only remember twice where the ice set up where there was a northeast wind and it actually hit our shore and heaved the shore up. And when you have ice damage, it actually pushes the shore up. So you'll have grass and the stone rocks will be up on shore. You don't have the sloughing off. So what I noticed this year also was the rocks, there was only like 2 rocks that actually got slid out by the ice. So the ice isn't grabbing the rocks and moving them. The ice is melting and going away. So ice and wind damage is not the problem. We can't park boats at our pier at all, because Brian was there last year. He parked to come up for dinner. He took about 150 gallons over his boat. I watched it happen. And you cannot park. And he was parked, not sideways, not towards he was parked with the pier. So I guess the only way to prevent it is you'd have to take it probably park nose out, and that may not work with the back of the motor towards shore. So the damage is really substantial from the wakes, and I'm not just blaming the wake surfboards. Boats. I understand that there's some bigger boats out there, and that's why I think high bow riding needs to be looked at too. But with the 200-foot and 20-foot restriction, if you see where we're at with 1,060 feet distance from the camp to our shoreline, you reduce that to 600 feet of surf area. Then if you put the underwater hump that comes out, that comes up to approximately 5-6 feet, and you put one moored boat on that. By ordinance, anybody skiing, surfing, or tubing has to stay 200 feet from that boat. Now the skiers can go on the other side because if they are not restricted to 20 feet. That pushes all the wake surf boats to our side to a 125-foot path from basically our buoy to the 200 feet from where the moored fishing boat is. So 125 feet, it's going to be pretty tough to stick, even 2 going through there to avoid other boats. So basically, the 200-foot shore restriction, it won't work if you're going to keep them out of the depth. And to preserve the shorelines, we've had the 200-foot rule forever now, slow no wake, and our shoreline's taking a beating, and I know Pat Bergen lives next to us, and eventually his shoreline will look like ours. His rock wall is newer than ours. Ours is older, but he'll be in pulling rocks up too. So I think it's something that really we have to do something, and sooner than later. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Okay, I'm going to take a couple questions here, and then we'll go on from there. One is dealing with the loss of fish spawning beds and the impact. This is a big issue. Let me just talk first about species, bass. Bass will spawn between probably third week of May into mid to late June. You have shallow spawners and then you have deep spawners. Deep spawners typically will make beds. We see them in 10 feet of water. And wake boats are out at that time. The process for bass to spawn is they fan out a bed and then they fertilize the eggs, they hatch. Female takes off, the male protects the ball of the fry. Well, a wake boat comes through, wipes out that ball. That's pretty much it for that spawning effort for that fish. It's very tough for them to reconvene. It exposes them to predation in that. As I mentioned in my portion of the program, we have seen reductions in the number of fish that we catch. Not only that we register in the tournament, but anecdotally. We used to be able to go out and catch, I call them entertainment fish, while we're fishing for fish big enough to bring in from the tournament. We could go out and catch 20, 30, 13-inch bass, which are a lot of fun to catch. We don't see that anymore. And the bass that we caught last year tended to skew on the bigger side. We had a lot of 18, 19, 20 inchers. Those are existing bass. We're not seeing the up and coming 15, 16, what that be 16, 17 inchers coming in. And we have all this recorded. I mean, we keep track of every fish that's brought in. As far as crappies are concerned, crappies actually spawn right in cabbage weed. The crappie population is significantly down. We don't have many cabbage weeds left, especially deep ones. So that's an impact. The bluegills, we have a species that they spawn in shallow water. Those are way down. We're not seeing those like we used to. Same thing with bluegills as well. You have shallow, same as bass, you have shallow spawning bluegills. You have deep spawning bluegills, ones that build their spawning nests in 10 feet of water. Those are going to be impacted by prop wash coming over that area. If those eggs are sitting in that bed and that prop wash comes through, there go your eggs in your batch of up and coming bluegills. Next question was the difference between weed bed or lake bed damage and weed harvesting. So I know Doug with the management district on the weed cutter, their objective with the weed cutting is to get, they don't take the weeds out by the roots or anything, they just clip them off. It's like cutting grass. And they don't go in very shallow. The big paddle wheels they have would do bottom damage, so typically they go in a certain point and then they back out. And they have a big cutter and a conveyor that grabs the weeds. In talking with him, their harvest amounts have been down significantly over the last number of years. So they're seeing less weed harvest. In terms of, so bottom line, weed cutters, they shouldn't be doing lake bed damage. But prop wash, I think the videos that you have seen, the one that I recorded in 20 feet of water, we clearly see a blowout. When you see a boat going over a point or a hump and the brown plume is up behind it and the weeds are floating, roots and all, that's clearly a different deal. I actually mentioned we should take a look at finding a grad student or someone doing a thesis to find out, I GPS some of these spots. How long does it take for these deeper weed beds to come back? And what comes back? Do we get cabbage back or what? We don't know that.
We actually have an expert identified that we hoped could be here today.
Mm-hmm.
Our next session will specifically address that.
Okay.
What I've been told from them that it can be a couple of years up to a decade.
Yeah, I mean, deep weeds are in cool water and things don't happen fast. So, that's something that we hope to educate, get more information on and find out what's going to happen in those spots. I think those are the two I have. I'll have the next speaker come up.
Liz Aiken, you're still here. She has a testimonial or request.
It's Arkin.
Arkin, sorry.
That's okay. It's my handwriting. Hello, my name is Liz Arkin, and I have a family-owned cottage on Booth Lake. And I always felt like Lake Beulah was our sister lake. And when I heard about this meeting today, I thought maybe I could get some ideas to address the wakeboarding situation on Booth Lake. Now, Booth Lake is 118 acres, so it's small, versus Beulah is 112 acres. And Booth Lake is maximum depth of 24 acres. So it's quite a bit smaller and more shallow than Lake Beulah. And our average depth around, it's a circular lake, and our average depth around is 8 to 10 feet. So we have been seeing a lot of those massive waves. They're starting to ruin our shorelines, like he had just mentioned. And also, they are turning our lake from a typical clean water lake, spring-fed, with localized weed beds, and they're turning that all upside down. Right now, the lake is murky, and we have massive amounts of invasive weeds to the point, and now my grandpa built our family cottage. I've been we're on our 5th generation, so I've been swimming there for my whole life. I'm to the point of I don't like to even go underwater anymore. I don't like my head under the water because it feels too murky. And I believe that is from the way boats churning up the silt. Now, I'm not an expert, but this is my personal experience of what's happening on our small lake. Now, here we did, for the first time ever in my entire life, we had to hire mechanical lawnmower, I'll just call it, to chop up the weeds, okay? Because now everything is different. And I'm really hoping that we can create ordinance to protect Booth Lake too. And I'm a little concerned because we would like to unify with Lake Beulah, but I'm a little concerned because we are governed by 3 townships. So you mentioned there was 2 townships for Beulah. So I think we have to figure out a way to figure that 3rd township up. But I trust the attorney can help me out with that. And also, I would like to know if there was any way we could get more of these, because I would like to put them in our mailboxes on Booth Lake.
You can download them at lastwildernessalliance.org.
Oh, okay, thank you. And just another personal experience last year, real quick. We're pontooners and swimmers, and our boat got disabled last year, and we had to be towed. Do you think the wakeboarders would stop and not come around us? They came right by us. They saw we were being towed, and we smashed into a pier. They didn't care at that time what was going on, or maybe like your experience, they didn't see us. I don't know. But anyhow, please, could Booth Lake please unify with you, and also maybe some of the other smaller lakes, because I am a grandma, and I would really like to see my grandchildren and their children enjoy the lake like my grandpa had it for us. Okay, so if you could help support Booth Lake too, I appreciate it.
So your first step is going to be to join our grassroots initiative so you can see and hear everything that we're doing. And absolutely, we will be the best neighbor we can be.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Okay. Richard, I'm going to have you come up next, and he's got a handful of questions that he's going to go through.
12 of Carol's presentation on the science, slide 12. Actually, I'm going to call up a much greater expert than I am on any matter scientific, my boss. But before we get to Carol, someone said, if we have no type of restrictions or an ordinance, what will keep more and more wake boats from launching on Beulah? Even with the restrictions, they can launch, only a ban will prevent this. Well, that's more of a cagey observation than a question, but it's exactly right, and that is the dilemma of Beulah. It has no central big area. It's not like Pewaukee Lake where they've got 300 acres that you can put wake surf boats on. If you try to get wake surf boats in these areas, they cannot and will not stay there, period. There's no possibility of a compromise on Beulah. And Carol?
Oh, the other room does not have the screen, they can't see.
Okay. Carol got asked a great question. If the study says 500 feet, why are we going with 700 feet? And there is a great answer.
There's several reasons, actually. First off, it said 550 feet, not 500. And also, another point is that in Beulah, I compared that to the state law of 100 feet from shore. I really should have been doing it for 200 feet from shore, which is even lower, which would bring it way out to about 700 there. And another reason is that the newest boat was a 2019 model. Most of them were quite a bit older. So what's the difference? That's an arms race. Manufacturers making bigger, badder boats every year. And then go down about 4 slides, I think, on mine. The other issue is where it shows some little boats. Keep going. This one here. The other issue is safety. Darren Kuhn, who's the boating law administrator for the state of Wisconsin, he gave a presentation to the Natural Resources Board in August. And what he basically said was that no laws protect the safety of other boaters from the big wakes from wake boats. The only law that typically helps is the approach or pass law, where if you're fishing right here, 200 feet from shore, and this ski boat goes by, he's got to stay far enough away from you so as not to approach or pass, so as to create a dangerous wake or wash. And the example this boating law administrator gave is that if this surf boat went by 200 feet from you, that's too far to be considered approaching or passing. So even though the boating industry says that this wake hitting this boat is going to be 16 inches high, the surf boat was technically not approaching or passing. And so he's done nothing wrong. You can't give this surf boat a ticket, even though he sent a 16-inch wake to that fishing boat. And so if you add, you got to have some safe place for that poor fishing boat. So even if he just stays 200 feet from shore and then you add 500 feet, 600 feet, 700 feet to that, it brings you out to 700 feet. So there's, 4 good reasons why it needs to be 700 feet. Thanks.
Good morning, just barely. My name's Steve Hewing. I serve on the PLB board, and I've just been handed a couple of questions that I'll attempt to answer, but we may have experts alongside me that can do an even better job. Before I do that, though, I do want to remark that so far I've seen almost all of our town trustees here this morning, so I count that as a great win for our effort today, and I want to thank them for coming out. the question that was posed, I've heard that the lake would have become cloudy with damage, but are zebra mussels responsible for keeping it clear? Could that be true, or is that a false reassurance? And we've got water experts with us, but in my simple mind, we've got a complicated environment in which you've got some things affecting it towards clarity, some things affecting it in the opposite direction. Zebra mussels are a longer running issue for us, so the lake has in some ways adjusted to the presence of zebra mussels, but the bottom disruption is ever increasing as the number of boats and the power of the boats increases. That sediment disruption gets into the water column, and that's something in addition to what the zebra mussels would be responsible for. Is that a safe?
I think so, yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
One thing I'll just add is that the zebra mussels may be masking some other problems.
Much better than I could have said it. The studies you cited demonstrate engineering data and anecdotally short-term impact. Do you have any long-term data or outcomes? And the answer to that, and again, in my simple mind, is that this is a problem that's still building. The boats were smaller, the boats were less numerous, so long-term data is what lies ahead of us. We're trying to get out ahead of the long-term damage before that data accumulates. So if that's a valid response, I'm getting
I'll just add a little bit.
shakes of the head.
We have a PhD limnologist in our group, and he said it would be impossible to do the kind of studies that they're asking for. You'd have to have data going way back for a whole bunch of different lakes, and then you have different things going on, like the zebra mussels masking problems and all sorts of things. He said you're not going to get a meaningful study until it's way too late. Thanks.
That was my two questions.
I actually got a question directed straight to LBMD. That is, why isn't LBMD put in a proper wash station at the landing? It's not LBMD's landing, is the easiest question. That is a Town of East Troy landing. LBMD has advocated for, and I think the Town of East Troy has agreed to start participating in the Clean Waters program, or Clean Boats, Clean Waters program. That is a signage and instruction program at this point, so there will not be a wash station. I have heard rough guesstimates of putting in a wash station are in the $40,000 to $60,000 range. And I've also done some research. I don't think a proper wash station, as we understand it, which might be sufficient for live wells and fishing boats and things like that, the exterior of boats and exterior of trailers, is not going to be sufficient to clean the ballast tanks of surf boats. Something else entirely is required for that. Those are not sufficiently accessible that a simple wash station is going to get that done. So first things first, we could, as an area, simply agree that we do not allow off-lake, or we have essentially a boat passport. Your boat goes on Beulah, and that's it. Or your boat, those of us who are lucky enough to own a house on Beulah, our boats never come off, and they never go anywhere else. But that would be one step to avoid the quagga mussel, which boats do go back and forth between, it's 8 miles, I think, or something like that, to Lake Geneva. It's a matter of time before those mussels show up on our lake, and that is not something we will ever, ever get rid of.
Introduce Joe Clarkowski, wants to do a testimonial.
And now Joe Clarkowski for a testimonial. And while he gets up, I have recognized a few more faces as I've stood up here a little bit longer. I also want to thank the town leadership for showing up to this meeting. I do appreciate it.
Thank you. Joe Clarkowski. I've been on your board for 20 years, and I've been fishing Lake Beulah almost as much as Brian. It's somewhere between 38 and 40 years, and I'll agree with some of the things I heard about the fishing having a little bit of a problem recently. But I am a proud owner of a 6.5 pound dogfish and a 40-inch northern pike. And I used to always enjoy the 12 to 14 inch crappies off the horns and on the flat. Can't find them anymore. So that is an issue. But I do want to thank everybody for organizing this great informational forum. I applaud the LBMD and Protect Lake Beulah for their professional and proactive approach to this national issue. And it is a big one. I urge everyone to be patient as this process plays out and follow the science. According to Speaker Voss's office, who I spoke to a couple days ago, nothing has been introduced in the Senate or the Assembly on this issue. And it is possible something could be forthcoming, but it doesn't sound like it. And he did say the last time this came up in the discussion around Madison, it was not a very popular issue. As a matter of fact, it was a very unpopular issue. So it's probably right. You're probably not going to see anything from the state level. So you got the DNR level. DNR, like it was told here, they can't really regulate that. However, they talked about providing guidelines. That's not going to happen either. They will not pick one lake user and pit them against another because they have to represent everybody. So again, you won't see anything from the DNR. So what does that leave? That leaves the local board to do something. So it will have to be a local ordinance, and with much more discussion, they will have three choices. And we heard some of them. We didn't hear one of them. One of them is do nothing, because that's always an option. The second option is to add restrictions, and the third option is an outright ban. More input will come at the annual meeting. I hear it's on the agenda, but I do believe it's time for the board to act. Thank you.
They gave me a couple Madison questions, which I think might be helpful for the group. First question, if a local ordinance is passed here in East Troy, can the state overrule it, this legislation later with state legislation? Take out your ordinance, or would our ordinance be grandfathered in? To the first part of that, the state, if you pass a local ordinance, the state can nuke it. Some of you may remember shoreland zoning about 10 years ago. The state really nuked the ability of locals to do that. Looking back 10 years, very unpopular situation that Madison jammed through, so they could. They also could say, because they don't want all these 40 towns that Richard talked about coming up and complaining they're gonna lose their ordinance, they could theoretically say, every town that has an ordinance in place by July 1st of this year, your ordinance holds, no more new ordinances. Anything can be done. There's another question here which asked, has the industry offered anything to help us understand how to save our lake? Why do they not accept invitations to participate in studies? So, two Madison war stories here. One of our board members was in a negotiation mediation session at the Capitol with some representatives, leaders. This was about 2.5 months ago. And also in that session was the lobbyist and representative from the wakeboat manufacturers. And there was some back and forth here in front of a few legislators about 200 feet, 500 feet, 700 feet, all of that. And at that point, our board member went and said to the wake surf manufacturer representative, said, we got a great idea. Ice is coming off the lakes in Wisconsin here in April. Why don't we pick a testing organization that we can agree on? Could be Terra Vigilis, could be UW Freshwater Sciences, whoever. Let's get some boats out on the lake. Let's get cameras. Let's invite the media to this thing. And let's see what's happening. Let's run these tests. Let's see the downward prop wash. If there is impact at 20 feet or 20 plus feet, let's see the waves on the shore. We're glad to do it. And the wakeboat industry representative said, we're not doing that. And you ask yourself, that would be a real easy way for them to solve all of this if they truly believe what they're telling the wakeboat owners, that 200 feet, 10 feet of water is all safe. And I think that when you look at that, that was just really illustrative of what the issue is here. They are really not wanting to participate in any of this because frankly, they already know the answers. And the response, the other response that the wakeboat manufacturer rep gave was he said, we don't need any more tests. He said, our manufacturers are experts in water and fluid dynamics. They understand how to create the waves, they understand what the waves do, and they're really no different than any other boat. So we're the experts. Tells a lot. One other Madison war story. We've been at this for 1.5 years, talking with a couple legislators who happen to live on large lakes. These are lakes where if there was a statewide statute at 700 feet, there still would be areas, pockets of wake surfing. And these legislators said, we can't support the bill that you'd like. Well, what's the rationale for that? Well, it's gonna force all the wake boats to our lake. Well, there's some irony in that, okay? I mean, they kind of wanna share the blessings of wake surfing with everybody. And I mean, I think it's very telling where we're at. So that's what's Madison is going on, and I think to highlight what the other speaker said, Madison is in gridlock right now. There may be a Republican legislator or two who will be forced to, I'm gonna call it walk the plank, and introduce the industry bill here in the next month or two. But I'm telling you, there's a lot of really good Republicans that are on our side on this issue, and there's a lot of Democrats certainly on our side as well. So, thank you.